Good morning to anyone out there who happens to be paying any attention. My name is Eli Harrell, and this is an interview series that I'm calling Products with Purpose. Just a quick introduce myself. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, a big advocate of lifelong self-directed learning, and a huge supporter of purpose-driven businesses. The purpose of Products with Purpose is to tell the stories of extraordinary people who are putting everything on the line, going all in to create real impact. People that are building products and businesses that are meant to sustainably change the way that we live and also the way that we see the role of business on the planet. As you would know, if you're an entrepreneur, when you really go all in like that, failure can really be disheartening. So my goal in these interviews is just bring stories to you that will potentially increase the odds of success by sharing stories of other people who are in the same vital game. And so it's my pleasure to introduce this morning Dominique Moralez, who has a really interesting, diverse background. He's served as International Business Development Director to international, local brands in Hong Kong. He's been in a bunch of different industries, from entertainment, health and well-being, financial services, food and beverage, multimedia, blockchain, hotelier, all kinds of different things. So I'm very fascinated about Dominique's broad perspective from that background. And now he is the co-founder of Fenix TLS, which is a language technology solutions provider. He's based in Hong Kong. He's actually a founder of a number of different companies working right now on something called Manio Docs. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we go along. So I'll let him kind of tell you some of his background and why he's doing what he's doing. So without further ado, welcome, Dominique, and thanks for being here this morning.
Oh, thank you so much, Elliot. It's my pleasure. I'm so, I can say, honored to be included. I've seen some of the interviews that you've done for this series and some of the people that you've had most recently, including, I think his name was Tom, was one of the more recent from Start Some Good.
Yeah.
Wonderful projects that people are creating and that you're bringing to the fore. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the introduction as well. I certainly, in retrospect, having passed through all these various different iterations of professional life, in particular in these past 7 years, it's really been an amazing journey to really explore and discover. And I think what you'll hear more throughout the course of our conversation today, and really what I've been focusing on, is nurturing authentic human relationships. And, we can talk more about what that therefore produces and what that provides as a context in the realm of business. I think it's something which we talk about probably more within the personal relationships in our lives, but to extend that into the realm of business creates a very powerful context for people to get related and to begin journeying together. So you gave a fairly comprehensive overview of my background. I did want to, of course, also share a bit about what we're up to in more recent times. But thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Man, I really want to dig into nurturing authentic human relationships. I very much believe in the power and I want to talk about that more. So before we do, though, tell me a little bit, tell us a little bit about, maybe fill in the gaps of kind of your journey and how you, just in a little nutshell, like how did you get to where you are now, and how did you get to be someone focused on solving problems with business?
So actually, I come from a background of fairly traditional, I would say, industry. I spent 3 decades, starting from the time when I was a child, in the entertainment industry in the classical music sector. And my journey was so completely and entirely unexpected. No one would have ever guessed, including myself, that I would be sitting here in this seat today. But what it looked like was I fell in love with the process of creating something from nothing and having it being totally unique. And that's really the essence of where I started. I mean, if you want to talk about where I began as a child and as an instrumentalist, and then becoming a singer, a boy soprano, and experiencing being on stage for the first time in an opera when I was 10 years old, that really set the stage for really how many of the different aspects of my later profession developed. Because, you know, when I connect with something at that high level of passion, and, you know, commitment, I will go as deep as possible to really experience, develop myself, and also to connect through that platform, I guess you could say. So, you know, from that time when I first stepped on stage, I knew immediately, like, this is what I'm going to do. I heard the little voice in my head that said, you're going to do this the rest of your life, and this is it. Mind you, I was a bit more compelled by the fact that they were feeding me ice cream on the stage whilst the show was going on. So part of the staging was that I would pick up this ice cream cup and start eating and sing along at the same time. Doesn't seem very, I don't know, practical now, but in retrospect, it's what really had me going. And of course, we were being paid for our work. So there was a couple of incentives that were built into the experience. But from that, I then really fell in love with the process of preparation and rehearsal. And I became a multi-instrumentalist. I was trained as an actor and as a dancer and so on. And I found myself in my very early 20s, around 22 years old, 21, 22 years old, making my debut in Italy. I then went on to Paris National Opera the following year as an apprentice, spent a few years there, and then went on to traveling the world in every major city that you can imagine as a classical musician, as a singer, as an opera singer. And so, you know, there's absolutely zero connection between that journey and where I currently am today, other than to say that when I really realized what it was going to take to have the space in my life to create the one thing that I had always really deep in my heart wanted, which was to have a family of my own, that being on the road 11 months of the year wasn't going to facilitate that. So I jumped off that boat, and I don't want to gloss that over, because that was a major decision, and it took every bit of courage that I had to do so. And I only make a point of it because you know, imagine yourself today having been in, I don't know, technology or law or any given profession, any study for at least even a decade or 2 decades of your life, and then, you know, quitting all of that today to become a professional classical musician with zero preparation, right? Like no preparation, right? So I dove into this about 7 years ago. And what I mean by this is I jumped into the world of startup and into the world of innovation. And at the time, I was still on my own, but I shortly thereafter had relocated to Hong Kong after being in China and throughout the rest of Europe, of course, and Asia and so on. And I met my now wife. And when we found out that we were having our first daughter, our first child, I should say, we have a son and a daughter. When we found out we were having our first child, we decided that we wanted to stay home with her for the first full year of her life. And in order to create a reality where that was going to be possible, we realized that our jobs at the time were not going to provide us with that opportunity. We were working really full time. And so we quit our jobs, and we did the most logical, or I guess you could say now illogical thing one would do as a parent, maybe even you could say irresponsible. We created a startup. And that's, at the heart of it, that was what brought us to this journey. We created a language technology solutions business that was based on both of our strengths in our backgrounds and training. My being a linguist and having been trained in numerous languages from all over the world, from both Europe and you could say also throughout other parts of the continent and so on. So both of us were linguists. My wife was educated as a linguist and Chinese history and literature scholar. And so the both of us put our heads together and we came up with this language services company.
Hmm.
And, you know, it wasn't like we had this amazing new fintech idea or that we had this incredible new gadget to kick off on Kickstarter or something like that. We didn't have MBAs from Oxford's MBA program, or it wasn't that at all. We simply wanted to create something that would have our lives working for our family and be there with our child for the first year of her life. And yeah, I can basically kind of stop there to segue into whatever other question you have, but that's the setup. Like that's how we actually got to the point at which we were jumping into the world of startup. And from there, I can tell you more about how we then kind of, morphed into
Yeah.
this octopus of an entity.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. I just got to pull on one thread first. You seem like someone who, I mean, obviously you've developed some very deep skills in many different areas of music and language. First of all, just real quick, which country were you born in? Where are you from originally?
I was born in the United States.
Okay, wasn't sure. And then, so you've mastered to some degree so many different things that other people would think would take many years each to learn. Is it fair to assume from that story that you're a very self-driven learner? Or
You absolutely must be if you are to be successful in the realm of the music industry, frankly. And I can go more into detail on what that actually means and looks like, but there's no one in that industry that provides you with a template for how to do the career.
Mhm.
You've got to be someone that is operating at all real levels, including operational level, strategic level, and so on, in order to be able to have any semblance of a, I would say, successful career. Now, that's not even considering what it would be like to have a successful international career. To have a
Right.
successful international career requires that you are able to hone in on things like international business development. I didn't even know that was, I didn't know that was what I was doing at the time, right? That industry is highly I won't use the word infested because that would be rather insulting, but it is full of agencies and agents who take on this role of representing you, and they're highly inefficient and ineffective. I can say that quite frankly, just straight across the board, in particular because they're similar to what we see in I guess you would say the banking industry around technology, right? They're very much behind in developing themselves in ways that meet the real needs of consumers today. So the consumer or the customer in the classical music industry being the artists, I was shouting at the top of the mountains for having social media campaigns 10 years ago, and none of the agencies were doing it. I was shouting for having, websites that pointed people in the direction of interacting with artists rather than having them, land on a website that no one actually was reading. I was pushing to have them creating unique videos that would engage people in content that was relatable rather than just reproducing some staid old visuals that people would normally see if they went to any old opera house. It just wasn't interesting. So I got frustrated with that lack of relatedness to really like what people were enjoying, and I saw the opportunity to create something outside of that. So, there was a bit of a confluence of factors contributing to my exiting the industry at that time. And it wasn't like a smooth transition. I went from probably the best production I've ever participated in and collaborated in my lifetime to literally not being on stage for the past 7 years.
Well, it sounds like you got fed up. You just hadn't had it up to here, and stepped out, or what
I
made
want
you
to make it
decide to?
clear that it wasn't that I was jumping out because I got fed up. I jumped out because I saw this is my opportunity. Right here, I am. I've just finished this production, which I felt like I had really the optimal experience. I really felt like I gave the optimal performance. I really felt like whole, right? I
Okay.
really felt complete about it. And I thought, this is my opportunity. If I don't jump out now, the likelihood of me having the space to have a family or do other things or explore other things is
Wow.
probability is probably fairly low. So it probably would
Okay.
be an opportune moment. So that's when I did it. Yeah.
I find that type of journey fascinating, because that's kind of how I've seen when I look back on my life. I've built a lot of skills in a lot of different areas. Some of them are bizarre and unexpected, but I feel like I've um, gotten passionate about things when I was in the steep part of the learning curve. I got to the place where I was pretty happy with the level of mastery I reached, but then I grew as a person to the point where I saw something else I wanted to do next, and needed to kind of switch gears. And I
Mm.
think I relate with that. And so then, so in your music career, you started to see that you needed to promote yourself, and you started to see the gaps in the way that people were being promoted. And did that somehow connect to your next stint as in business development? How did you go from music to business development?
I
Just
was curious.
curious.
I was curious. I had a curiosity about what was possible for our industry if we took existing technologies and started to look at how we could innovate to provide solutions that would, solve some of the real basic bottlenecks. And one of those bottlenecks was, how do you how do you find an artist? How do you select an artist? How do you hire an artist? Those are some of the initial questions. And I thought, well, we've got technology today that allows us to build platforms that are essentially aggregators that you can, create a sorting system and provide people with really clear pathways to finding artists. Now, the next problem is, how do we provide them with a solution to be able to engage an artist? Well, we've got to provide them with their fee schedule. We've got to provide them with contracts and so on. And there was a lot at that point in time that I saw could be possible. And so one of my initial projects was to work on solving that issue. And I didn't immediately find a competitor in the marketplace. And then I remember one day I was working on this, and um, someone sent me a link, and there was a company like 2 blocks away from where I was actually working out from at the time. And they were creating something, but in a more kind of like garage band style platform, whereas I was focusing on the high end, more award-winning artists, globally recognized artists, so on. And that's not a project that I continued on. There were some things that happened at that time, and I was bootstrapping the project. I wasn't familiar really with fundraising at all. I didn't know how to. I wasn't familiar with any of that. Right? I thought, well, if you build it, they will come. And so, there were people that were, coming to the platform, and we were starting to work towards something of a launch. But it was my first experience. I learned a tremendous amount at that time. And so where I went from there was to look at how I could be of service in the music industry to provide artists with the kind of relatedness, like authentic relatedness, that wasn't happening between them and the agencies. So I really looked into, like, what is your vision? And at that time, asking artists, what is your vision for the next 10 years of your career? Like, no one was asking those questions. You just kind of, as an artist, went along with what the theaters were telling you to sing or what the agencies were telling you to sing. And no one had a real specific measurable way of going about finding out what did the audience want to hear from this artist, right? Like, there were no at that time, there were no classical musicians on Instagram. There was no one like promoting. And I was probably, I would reckon, one of the first artists to promote myself over MySpace and actually get an engagement using MySpace in another country. I remember I was found on MySpace by Singapore Lyric Opera, and I was engaged simply through my MySpace.
Wow, that's cool.
So, why I share that is because in the background of that, it was leading me toward seeing possibilities that I could apply or innovations that I saw being possible in my own industry, I started to make that transition from only focusing on where I was busy in life to focusing on where other people were experiencing issues, and started to look out and see, where else could I apply myself? Where else could I apply my intellectual effort that I am hereby generating across this very niche market that I'm in? How can I take that out and start to understand what are the problems other people are dealing with in other industries? And it became this discovery process that was so exciting and fun and an adventure. And I found myself really, in places I never would have imagined as a result, right?
Yeah.
So there's a big contrast between those behaviors and how I see it now in retrospect, because in my previous industry, in particular classical music, you are in one repertoire and you stick to that. It's like you only code in Python. If anyone asks you to code in C++, just tell them no. It's not possible. You can't do that. Don't touch it, right? And so it's quite funny because, now having been in this world for some time, I mean, the world of programming is full of languages, and they're all bringing certain aspects and attributes that can, help a project. So I would never think like that now, but previous in time, that's how it was. So this was a big leap for me. I mean, it was a real relearning and learning and discovery and exploration process, which, at that time, of course, I was probably a lot more adventurous than I am. My wife probably won't agree with this statement. Than I am now. She's probably going to hear this and say, that's absolutely not true. But in any case, yeah, I really had a ball. And then by the time I met my wife, starting to have a family and so on, it was less about adventure, more about getting clear on what are the functions and operations of a business that are required to actually have something be sustainable and, quite literally put food on the table. So,
yeah. I love the way I'm just, the picture I'm painting in my head, listening to you of your journey. It sounds like you are a very self-directed, self-driven learner, but you're also somebody who gets very curious about understanding problems you see. So when you see a gap in the market, or you see people not being served well, that you put a lot of energy into deep diving to understand that problem. And which is no doubt, I'm sure that has a lot to do with the success you've had so far. So tell us a little bit, like there's a lot of threads I'd love to pull on here, but I think just for the audience sake, like tell us a little bit about the, maybe a little bit about the success you had with it's called Fenix TLS. That was the
yeah, sure.
language. And then how that kind of led to what you're doing now. And especially I really want to zero in on the purpose that you discovered when it comes to helping companies raise capital. So maybe just that journey, the
yeah,
success
sure.
of, go.
So, having set this all up, kind of giving you the perspective of, if you were to quit your job today after a couple decades as a professional and try to become a classical musician, it's just about as absurd as you can imagine. And for me at the time, that's also probably what it looked like to most people. I didn't see it that way, but I just thought it was an adventure. So, at the time when we began our first company, Fenix TLS, we also created a vision for a multi-generational 100-year family-owned and operated company. Now, we didn't realize how outrageous that might sound to people, but what we envisioned was creating something that our children and their children could pick up and also participate in, rather than creating something that would be a flash in the pan. Like, we weren't looking to be the next, I don't know, name your favorite mystical creature, unicorn, whale, whatever you want to call it. We were looking to create something that was sustainable, and not just as like, a sustainability goal. We were looking to create something that literally would last generations. And why was we very early on were fortunate enough to be introduced to a couple of companies, multinational corporations, that were owned and operated to this day by families. And we found that so truly inspiring and truly compelling, because, imagine today that everyone that works in your organization, or even, half the people in your organization are your family members. Right? I mean, I think most people might cough up their coffee just hearing that, considering that idea. It's like, there's no way I could work with my wife. There's no way I could work with my father. Like, that would just be the end of all ends. But, actually, from a statistical point of view, my understanding, and this probably needs to be updated, but in early times, we also discovered that throughout our own region here in Asia Pacific, it's really one of the fastest growing areas of new business is family-owned and operated businesses. And their longevity is also impacted by the bond between family members. Levels of trust also obviously being higher than what you would have if you just found someone on a co-founder website, right? And so there are some unique aspects of that that also kind of come along with working with family members. But that was really our primary intention. That was really our vision. And we were purpose-driven from really wanting to create the absolute best version of our work, right? When it's your family, then it becomes less about whether or not you are, impressing, I don't know, name your stakeholder, investors and or the social media community, and more about whether the quality of the product, the quality of the service matches what the family's committed to. And so I suppose that was really one of the driving forces. And as a result of that, we actually had the opportunity to learn, like, how did this company that's over 100 years old, still family owned and operated, have its journey? Like, what did that look like? And as we went through and learned about these two different companies we were working with, and that we're still working with to this day, like 4 years later, right? It really gave us a foundation and a way to look at how we were going to create ourselves. And every single decision we made, for better and sometimes for learning, let's say, was impacted and influenced and guided by that. And so we early on had the opportunity to work with these larger organizations, and then we started to see some growth, and we were like, okay, now we need some additional support because we can't go on doing this on our own. And we started to discover, well, there might be some opportunities for us out there that we could get support. Like, what would it look like for us to have an advisor? What would it look like for us to have an investor? And we really didn't know what that journey was. We ended up at this Cyberport Capital Venture Forum in Hong Kong, which is a big event every year they have. They bring in all these investors and all these startups and so on. And we wanted to meet investors. And so we were sent a list of like 500 quote unquote investors, none of which there was any information. It's just like their website, their name, and, a general email address. So I went through the entire list. I narrowed it down to about 50 companies. I wrote to all 50 companies, each one an individual message. It wasn't spamming. And I got one reply. So we went and we met with this investor. And at the time, I tell this story often. So my wife was about 2 weeks from giving birth to our second child at that time. And we went to meet with this investor. He was 2 hours and 34 minutes late to our meeting. He showed up in khaki pants, a flannel shirt, sweating from head to toe. And, not that I have a bias against people with, khaki pants and flannel shirts, but, for an investor meeting at a major event, I was expecting something a little different. So it didn't meet my expectation. Mind you, showing up late also didn't work in his favor. And he asked us to come back a couple hours later, of which we did. But there was nothing, where else we were going to go. My wife was really pregnant and we weren't going to run off anywhere. So in any case, we met with this gentleman. I will give him the privilege of saying. And he spent, instead of 15 minutes allotted, he spent 45 minutes with us. And by the end, had promised us we were going to give you funding for your, software development. We're going to give you funding for this and so on. And we walked out just glowing and elated. And from the next day, we were sending messages. And within the next week, we kept sending messages. And within 2 weeks, it was obvious we were being ghosted and he was never going to contact us again. And so we were deflated. And I heard about another event that was happening at a place in Hong Kong called Tencent We Start Hong Kong, which is a part of this massive community across all of Greater China of Tencent We Start. And I heard that they were going to have an event where they were going to talk about a program where they would select a startup or startups and support them through their journey. And I was like, wow, it sounds amazing. So I ran over there And I was sitting in the audience listening to the kind of support that they were going to provide, thinking this would be perfect for us. Like, this would be amazing. We'd have advisors, we'd have someone to help us with our financials, we'd have someone to help us prepare, like, to pitch to investors. And then I wrote in my little book, like, we are not sexy. And I thought, we're not sexy. Like, we're a language solutions company. When we tell people what we do, they're just like, brr. You know, it's not like, oh, we've created a new, you know, micro nano satellite to launch. And like, no, it wasn't any of that. Or like, we're a language solutions company. Mind you, you know, it's a $54 billion industry, US, right? I mean, it's not a small industry. And so in any case, we're not sexy. And then as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, like, how would it be if that happened for us? And I just had this vision of, you know, what would happen for our company. So I thought, well, we'll pitch in anyway. And on that same night, I had this idea for a more efficient and effective way of connecting founders with investors, aligned on values, and nurturing those authentic relationships. I thought, it can't be like this. You know, in that year, it was 2018. I thought, we're in 2018. We've got all the technology required to be able to create something that is more relatable. And it was similar, like that conversation in classical music. I was like, why are we still doing this in such an antiquated way? Why are we still sending out like 50-page pitch decks that nobody's looking at? Like, how many, like, what does the pitch deck you know, cemetery look like in this investor's home? Like, you know, like, where did they have like a special cardboard box where they chuck them all in and like use for like fodder to start a fire when Christmas comes? Like, what does it look like in reality? And what we started to learn was, you know, at that time when I started to dig in, was that the amount of time that investors had available was also a problem. So on both sides of the story, there were issues. And at that time, I had what I can only, you know, describe as like a complete whole picture. It was like an instant where I could see the whole platform,
Solution.
like the whole solution. And then I just started racing to generate that on paper, right? And to generate that in models and to generate that. And so there were things that I had to learn. And I spent 18 months with our team learning things like how to use InVision. I taught myself how to use InVision. I taught myself how to create a wireframe. I taught myself how to, like, you know, do all these aspects of early stage design for a platform. And mind you, you know, my version of that is rudimentary, but I did learn. And, you know, my understanding of certain aspects of development probably are still within the realm of rudimentary. But what I didn't do is I didn't stop there, right? I then took that and I built on that confidence, and I later went and applied for a degree program at University of London in the computer science department, having zero experience in that realm, and got accepted to the machine learning and artificial intelligence program. Okay. And I've been on that study track now for since 2020, right? It's last year. And so that was another huge achievement. Like, I was an artist, and I thought, well, I'm never going to get a degree in anything unrelated, and I'm never going to be able to attend university. And I just totally annihilated that story. So, you know, along this journey, it's also been like this incredible exploration, incredible discovery of what's possible for me if I just open the lid and jump in. And, you know, not every one of those experiences has been great. Like, sometimes I've jumped in and the water is like frigid, and it's just a shocking kind of, you know, wake up experience. So we ended up getting accepted to that program at 10 Cent We Start, and the journey with their team has been extraordinary, nothing less. I mean, wow. The support that we've been provided has given us a view. And so the view that it's given us is that most startups don't have that support. They don't have someone assisting them and looking at, you know, what are the comparative price points for the same services and products in your industry, in your sector, with your competitors. You know, how do you develop a P&L that's legitimate, that an investor can look at and say, yep, I get it. I understand what you're trying to do here. How do you access and resource things like, you know, legal documentation for everything from NDAs to, you know, employment contracts and so on? Like, how are all these things done? Well, for the most part, entrepreneurs, founders are really thrown in the deep end of Google to discover that on their own. And most of that is, you know, I think largely now well structured, I would say. There's quite a lot of content. You can find really quality content, but at the beginning, that's just really a hard journey.
Yeah,
If you've
it
never
is.
been in it, like, again, I go back to this, analogy of if you were to quit your job today and go maybe become like a classical timpanist. What do you even know about that? Like, why would you do that? Are you crazy? And so, the idea is, with Minio at that time was, how do we create a very simple solution that takes people from an idea to visualizing it and then having it be presented in a very simple way. And in my mind, that simple way was through video. I thought, why aren't we utilizing video in a way that would allow people, meaning investors or other potential partners, mentors, stakeholders, to understand what I'm doing in a very short amount of time and in a very effective way, like that I hit all of the bullet points that they're expecting: market, problem, solution. Like, why hasn't this been created in such a way that I, as an investor, don't have to apply as much intellectual effort in this process? Like, I can sit down and for 30 minutes a week, I can look at 10 new opportunities because they're each 3 minutes long, and I know that already. And I know that in this process, I'm going to hear about, first of all, who is this investor? That's right at the very beginning. And I'm sorry, who is this founder?
Who's the founder?
And what is their vision? What is their mission? Why are they even doing this? Like, why is this person committing themselves to basically being a pioneer on the front side of something that's never been done? Or why are they jumping into e-commerce when, what are they doing? What is it about? What inspires them? What is driving them? And so I created Minio, and Minio became the platform for not only founders having a solution to present themselves in an efficient and effective way, but it also became a platform for people to get authentically related with one another and look at investment not from the kind of Berkshire Hathaway values investing, but from our generation, looking at it from, am I aligned on values with these individuals? Am I aligned on the values with the investor, right? Is this investor and I, or our organization, align on what we see being possible for the future in this industry and or for the world, for our community, and so on. And so these were the aspects that influenced the development of Minio. And, out from that, we identified other, which I have mentioned a little bit here, we can talk about as well, but we identified other areas that really required support for founders globally. Yeah.
Like legal documents, etc.
Yeah.
I'm very curious. I am looking forward to personally experiencing the Minio platform from beginning to end, because I think it's fascinating the way you describe it, and I think the problem that you're solving on both ends is really important. I love the concept of having a process that founders go through so that their story is being told in a very consistent way, so that the investors are seeing it kind of the same format every time. Makes a ton of sense. But the part I'm really curious about is what you're talking about here with nurturing authentic human relationships on that platform. It sounds like it's somehow being done there. And also, if I'm a founder and I've now followed your process and I've pitched myself and it's in this 3-minute video, tell me if I'm misunderstanding any of this. How can I then also start to see some of the genuine values of the investors? Like, tell me a little bit about that and how you're doing values alignment.
Sure.
Matching.
Yeah. So we, just to kind of round out the story, and I'll get into this next part of your question.
Okay. Sure,
we developed this over the course of 18 months. And what I mean by developed is, we went through the whole process of, creating something that was effectively the foundation for speaking with investors about Minio. And actually, this will kind of segue very naturally into this conversation about, developing authentic human relationship with investors, which I know in the same sentence probably doesn't even sound possible or plausible, but it is. So I promise it is. So, at the time, we were introduced to an investor whom we didn't even know actually was an investor. We thought it was someone that would connect us on with others. And what we discovered within the first 10 minutes of our conversation was that we shared values. I mean, it was like, imagine you go on a date and your date shows up, and you go through all the human bias and the first couple of seconds of head to toe. Okay, this person is dressed in a way that matches my criteria. They have blonde hair, they have blue, like whatever those criteria are, and you're like, okay, fits all of these aspects. And then they speak and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't listen to that voice for the next 25 years, right? So beyond that kind of filter of human bias, which is so highly critical and is also part of what we developed inside of Minio, was addressing that aspect, right? Beyond that is, as you said, the story, right? It's that authentic aspect of the creation of any founder's company and or product, service, whatever it is that they've been working on, that then starts to come through. And so as a result of this alignment, the velocity around what we were able to achieve in that first interaction with an investor we are aligned with was, from first meeting until the time at which we actually saw the funding, was 33 days. And that was also supported by, and I must acknowledge this as well, our now legal tech partner. So we were utilizing an automated legal documentation platform, which we have now created as well, a version of our own, which is powered by our legal tech partner. So what we saw was there was a confluence. There was a confluence of values alignment. We were prepared with our product service. We were developed on the side of the financials, which were ready as per like our P&L and so on. Our evaluation at the time, what we were, presenting, had been well prepared by our team. And so, all of those factors included really put us on a highway, you could say, I suppose, to, to this current stage. So once that was completed, we were then able to really begin the development of the platform itself, and how it will look for a founder that goes through the process. The process looks like an initial opportunity to actually share with us what it is that they're creating, right? And to then go through our process, which includes, for example, a script template. You could say, oh, well, anyone can make a 3-minute video, Dom. Like, there's plenty of people doing pitch videos out there. That's nothing new. Well, that's true, right? There's plenty of like people doing pitch videos, but I challenge you to find a company that does a sequenced pitch video that provides you also with some of the resources that we do. And I'm not saying that we are the only or will be the only, but the manner in which we're doing this is also, I think, distinct. So how we begin is that we actually go through and have this initial kind of interview. And then once we've had that and really understand what the founder is creating as their possibility, we then jump into the script. And the script is a template. And what's fascinating is that script template that we created, I've seen work across all of the industries that we're working in. Like, I was shocked and surprised because I thought, wow, it actually works, right? Like, and we don't have to wiggle it around. It actually works. So the script template allows people to go through and kind of like a Mad Lib. If you don't know what Mad Lib is, it's like a fill in the blank kind of child's book, right? It's like, yep. I went to the fill in the blank. Next day I did, So the script template allows founders to just go through and fill in the blanks. Then we review the script with them. We help them to dial in the script. In many cases, we're talking about founders who are domain experts who, come from highly technical backgrounds, who could talk, hours upon hours ad nauseum around the technology, but that's not what makes the difference in the communication with the investor. Not at that stage, not at the introductory stage. So once they've completed the script, then we're actually able to go to either the platform itself and record directly video, voiceover, select from stock footage, photos, and have it all be woven together by our platform without any additional editing tools. Or we support founders in going on site and shooting their minios with them. And then once those minios are complete, reviewed by our team and approved, they go onto our catalog. Once they're on our catalog, any investor that's registered on our platform can then go and search through different industries, different amounts that they want to invest, different stages, let's say pre-seed, seed, all the way up to Series A. And so, that's the journey for the founder to reach that point. Once they're there, there is also the ability to communicate directly with investors. And so we do have that kind of, like staged out, meaning, the founders have to be on the platform for a certain period of time before they can directly message. They have a certain number of messages they can send on a monthly basis and so on. So those are some of the nitty gritty details. But from the very first day, if you're an investor, you've come to our platform, you've registered, you will be able to directly communicate with founders. And I find that to be not entirely unique feature, but, imagine that you're doing this without the platform. Okay, maybe you go to AngelList, you find, there's a company that I'm interested in, you have to contact them, you have to request a deck. On our platform, not only can you view a Minio right away from the catalog, just like, a YouTube platform where you have a whole catalog of stuff. And you can search through all these different issues. You can view it right away. You can see how much they're raising. You can request a pitch deck, which is instantaneously put into your dashboard. You can then view the pitch deck. You can then contact the founder. Like, it's all right there. You don't have to go anywhere else, right?
Wow.
And so as a founder as well, this is a plus because, or at least I see it that way, because you don't have to think, I've got to go put together my pitch deck. It's already put together. Is it updated? Well, you can always update it. For the investor, they don't have to wait 3 days for a pitch deck, right? They don't have to sit on it. They already can see and hear the founder. So there's this very 360 experience that is relatable. Like, if you're going to ask an investor to look at your opportunity, why not provide them with an initial content that they can manage and relate to, which is video, right? This is you as a human, and that's what we saw was missing in the traditional pitch deck. What's missing in the traditional pitch deck is the human. Not everyone connects the same with copy. Right, and not everyone connects, not everyone can imagine just how extraordinary you are as a founder by reading, 30, 50 pages.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
All right. So I rambled there. I hope that gives sets up for, how it could be for a founder and an investor too.
For me, I've got a pretty clear picture in my mind. We'll see how well it matches what I experience when I eventually try using this. I really want to go through it someday. Couple questions I have. One would be, so far, are you guys set up to where anyone, anywhere, any founder anywhere can use this, or are you focusing on certain markets? What is it like right now?
I mean, I think what's really enjoyable about this process is that, you have a vision, or I have a vision of where we're going to be. In my deck, it says 3 years from now, we're going to be here. 5 years from now, we're going to be here. I laugh now because it's just ridiculous. So we thought, 3 years from now, we'll probably have the opportunity to have some first clients in North America. Literally from the first month, it was, we launched in May. We have clients in Europe, across Asia Pacific, Greater China, North America. It's really global. So anyone, anywhere can use the platform. The beauty of the platform is it's not an app. You don't have to download it from anywhere. We don't have to get approval from, Google or from Apple to have our app somewhere. It's not. Our mission is really to plant the seeds of opportunity with Minio in every community for founders worldwide. And that could be a community in, let's say, South America, in Colombia, that is creating a project that requires some kind of financing. And they can literally, just using their phones, they don't have to have any cameras. You can directly record your Minio from your phone through our sequence anywhere. Wow. And you don't have to be a founder you don't have to have any funding. I mean, Nepal, I understand, has a population of approximately 25 plus million, and they have something like 30 million phones. So anyone, anywhere can record a Minio.
Right.
And so, if you don't have stock footage, we have stock footage you can select from. If you don't have music, we have music you can select from. So you can create a legitimate Minio from anywhere in the world, and anyone can access it. Now, there is a registration process. We do have subscriptions that you can subscribe to on the platform in order to participate. But we're talking about a subscription that would be the equivalent of less than $500 for an entire year. Okay. The amount of time and effort that you utilize in trying to generate contact with investors is certainly going to be more than that. If you're doing it out there on your own. So we've also had opportunity to consider adjusting the price, and also in some cases providing perhaps in the future the platform for communities that are disparate, that are financially challenged, that would benefit from having access to the platform. And I'm all for it. We have 2 projects right now that we are in conversation with specifically for that purpose, because this technology and technology in general should not be limited to only those who can afford it, right? Having something which is not an app also means that anyone that has an internet connection and anyone that can write a URL can find us.
Yeah. I love that. I love what I'm seeing as a trend with quite a I think it's becoming more of a trend where people who are providing high value platforms are creating options where they don't want money to stand in the way from somebody leveraging it, and that they've got options for people to apply for either grants or free usage. That's really cool. One more question on the platform, maybe just in a quick answer here because we're running close on time, but
Sure.
are you considering, or have you already started to address streamlining the due diligence process at all, or is this just kind of the introductory part of between connecting and relationships starting, but not quite deeper in the process? Just curious.
So our vision is to create a comprehensive ecosystem. So where the company stands right now is we've got Minio, which is the platform to begin that kind of sequence video pitch deck process, help you dial in your message and be able to communicate efficiently, effectively over 3 minutes, and then connect with investors all over the world, right? And then in addition to that process, because of our parent company, we can help you localize your content. So if you want to reach investors, let's say in, I don't know, Kazakhstan, we can help you to transcreate and have a pitch deck that's entirely in Kazakh. Or you can have it, let's say you're from China, you want to have it in French. We can do all of those different aspects. And then once you actually connect with an investor, we also have an advisory that can help to support you in the development of different aspects of that process. So if it's putting together your P&L, putting together the cap table, putting together the valuation, we do have a team that supports on that aspect. Now, this coming few weeks, we'll be launching the next platform, which is Minio Docs, which is the next part, which are legal documentation. So in that process, you can have access to a catalog on Minio Docs of legal documentation that can be utilized for things like NDAs, employment, convertible notes. That's where we found ours. We got our convertible note off the platform. And so that will be the next step. And then the last stage that we see in this initial kind of ecosystem right now is the hiring process. So what does Minio Jobs look like? How do we utilize video technology to help teams participate in the process of hiring rather than entirely counting on one person who then is responsible when that new employee shows up on day one and doesn't click with anyone in the team, right? And the retention rate skyrockets because no one is considered what that person's relationship with those team members would look like. So how can we create that participation? So we're looking at creating a total ecosystem so that a founder can land here and know, just like they know when they pick up a pair of Bose headphones, I don't know, as an example, that across the Bose product line, my experience is going to be very extraordinary, and that it's going to look like this. So if I land on Minio Docs, I know I can expect this level of service. I can expect this level of simplicity in the process. I don't have to have, like I said before, and nothing against anyone with an MBA. Clearly, I'm not anti-education, but I'm just saying we've got to create and meet founders where they are at every level, right? And not just in developed nations. We've got to meet them in the developing world, in pioneer countries, in markets where people are just getting started. Like, what would it be like to participate in those markets and really support them through the whole journey? We're seeing it all across Southeast Asia now, right? The inflows of capital for these new projects. So yeah, that's to give you a little bit of an overview in the little bit of time that we have left of where we're heading.
Dominique, it sounds really exciting. And there's a number of other topics that I really want to talk about. And I think you and I should talk more about possible partnerships because we're trying to build guided processes for people that are building tech products and I think our clientele are very similar, and maybe there are ways that we can even collaborate. I'm very curious to see the process you've built for your clients and see what I can learn from you, etc. Maybe we can, and we build teams for our clients as well. So the job side of it is very fascinating to me.
My
Love
pleasure.
what I'm hearing. And just to kind of wrap up, I want to say that I love the way I hear you talk about the way you see your commitment to quality, and it sounds like going back to the time when you were asking the question, why is nobody asking the audience what they want to hear from these artists? That you've got a really big, deep commitment to understanding what customers actually care about, what their problems really are. And it sounds to me like that's very likely a large part of your success. And I would love, if we have this conversation again another time, I would love to dig more into kind of how you have succeeded in the processes of understanding your customers. But I think we're out of time for today. So
Yeah.
maybe we could dive back into another conversation someday and just really zero in on that customer feedback process, because it sounds like you're a master of that.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you, Ellie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thanks so much for the conversation today. I guess just to wrap it up, can you tell people where would you, if they want to know more about Minio? I now realize it's a play on the word video, so I got to pronounce it Minio. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that I was exhausted. I was talking to an investor very early on about Minio, and no, not an investor, it was a potential client. I was exhausted. I was talking to this potential client about Minio before there was even a platform, and the name of the company used to be, the name of the product used to be, I can't even say it now, mini video pitch deck. It sounds so unsexy, right? And then just rolled out of my mouth Minio, and they're like, "Oh, I love the name." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's the name."
There we go. Right. Love it.
So they can,
yeah.
I would encourage people really actually, if you'd like to learn more about what we're creating and how we can, collaborate and partner and serve you and your community wherever you are, contact me directly on LinkedIn. I'll take you through the whole process. We're not some multinational corporation here. We're a very small team. And, I'm happy to spend the time to really connect with people and see what it is there that we can support them with, or if there's something that also we can learn, right? I'm really a lifelong learner here, passionate about that aspect. So if there's anything that, in this conversation inspired or moved them or compels them to connect with us, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Of course, you can go to minio.io to find the platform itself. And I would also encourage you to check us out on LinkedIn. We don't have a huge social media presence. We just really haven't kicked that off yet. But, this is the first time I've done an interview since we launched. And I'm just so grateful to you, Ellie. Thank you for creating this platform. Thank you for sharing our message and our vision with your audience and your community. We really are truly grateful for the opportunity. So I look forward to talking with you more in the future.
My pleasure. Thanks for today. Talk to you soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.